Message from Starfleet Command, top priority.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 159, featuring the top 5 Vulcan episodes. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse. I'm the host of the TrekRanks podcast, and tonight we are returning to our Species series for the 6th time. Tonight we are getting extra logical with our top 5 Vulcan episodes. This is going to be so much fun that I promise our panel is going to do everything we can to try and suppress our emotions for the duration of our recording so things don't get too crazy, like with T'Lyn on Lower Decks, which might come up tonight. We'll see. So our first guest for this intense meeting of the minds was a student of Serac and is a Culinar Master returning for his 6th TrekRanks appearance. Parted from me and never parted, never and always touching and touched. We meet at the appointed place. It is Mr. Thad Hait. I told you it was going to be good.
Well, it is
Thad. Welcome.
Wonderful to be back on TrekRanks.
Love it. And our second guest tonight is making her TrekRanks debut. She is 1/4 of the original Women at Warp lineup. And we've had Andy, Sue, and Grace on previously. And now, finally, we are completing the Women at Warp Faltorpan Katra transference ritual here on TrekRanks by finally having the great Jarrah Hodge on the show tonight. Welcome, Jarrah.
Thank you for this fascinating opportunity.
Oh, perfection. I am
nice.
I've been wanting to get you on for the longest time, so super excited to have you here. I'm going to try and keep my emotions in check. So Jarrah, for our first time guests, we'd like to get our quick Trek origin story. I'm sure a lot of folks already know this. So what's your Trek backstory? How and when did you get into it? Are you a completist? What's your favorite?
Yeah, so I was raised on TNG with my older siblings watching it, and I was a bit younger than them, and definitely remember, my first Star Trek memory is the Best of Both Worlds cliffhanger. I think I was 5, and then I had to wait all summer for the conclusion to that, but I was definitely hooked by that. And then when Voyager premiered, my siblings had moved out of the house, and that was really like my first Trek that was all mine. And I was so excited about the first woman captain, and so that was my first Trek love, I guess. But I'm not a completionist. I have seen almost all of Trek, but I am very much of the view that we are so fortunate that there are so many different takes on Trek that are out right now, and it's totally fine if one of them isn't your jam. And for me personally, my favorite is probably Deep Space Nine or TNG if I really am looking for like comfort watching. DS9 less comfort watching.
A little less than TNG, but it's still very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. You're so right. We are so fortunate. I mean, these new shows, all the different takes we're getting on Trek right now. This is amazing. I mean, this podcast started before Discovery came out, so wow. I mean, that's crazy to think we've added 300 episodes since then. Or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is going to be a great show. Let's get started with our quick TrekRanks recalibration.
You can recalibrate the regulators now.
Will do.
Okay, the TrekRanks charter has 2 clauses. We rank Trek so we can have a fun conversation about Star Trek. And 2, the ranks don't matter. We just use them as a framework to have a deep dive conversation about all the things we love about Trek. And as the Vulcan Master likes to tell us each week,
infinite diversity.
Infinite combinations.
There are no wrong answers here at TrekRanks. This show is all about sharing the things we love about Trek. We love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds, Short Treks, Lower Decks, and Prodigy as well. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a reminder that this episode of TrekRanks is current through the end of Star Trek Picard Season 3, episode number 883. That's The Last Generation. And one final reminder that we use episodes as a shorthand term, but the 13 films are always in play as well.
Hailing frequencies open.
Thank you, Mr. Worf. You can hail me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra. And you can see our extensive rankings of all the Treks at TrekRanks.com. And don't forget to call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. Okay, to wrap it up, Thad and Jarrah, let everyone know how they can get a hold of you on Subspace. Thad.
Best place to find me is on Twitter, where I am at Tyrannicus. That's Tyranicus.
And Jarrah, how about you?
You can find me at Jarrah Penguin. That's JARRAH Penguin. And you can find the Women at Warp team and our shows at Women at Warp on all the varieties of the social medias.
Of course, Women at Warp, you may have heard of them. Yes, we love the Women at Warp. Okay, I think we're ready to run the diagnostic cycle to get into today's show.
Computer, run a level 2 diagnostic.
So really quick, this is the 6th time we're doing a show breaking down one specific species in the Star Trek universe. So as we do in all of our different series here on Trek Ranks, time for a roll call on the previous 5 species we've done a deep dive on. They are Klingon, Romulan, Borg, Cardassian, and Ferengi. And now those 5 will be joined by Vulcans. So definitely my favorite species in all of Star Trek. So I think this is going to be an awesome show. All right, that's it for the diagnostic cycle. Let's jump into our prime directives now.
Do they know about Prime Directive? They know everything I know, sir.
And you are about to know everything we know about our prime directives. And this show is kind of serving as our preview a little bit to Strange New Worlds Season 2. It's coming out right before Strange New Worlds, which we know did a great job with expanding on Vulcan a little bit in Season 1. So, Thad, let's start with you. How did you define your prime directive and finalize your picks?
Well, for starters, I wanted to make sure that my picks involved expanding knowledge and of Vulcans and showing things that increase our appreciation of the Vulcan people and culture, rather than just this episode has Vulcans in it, and I liked it. So that off the bat helped a lot, because otherwise, like, if we're just doing episodes with Vulcans in it, that's like half of Star Trek or more.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to make sure I did a variety of Vulcans. Like, I wasn't just doing, a bunch of Spock episodes. I wanted to make sure I did other things as well.
That makes perfect sense. I love that. Jarrah, how about you?
Yeah, I took a similar approach where I was looking for episodes that enlightened us on Vulcan culture and society or practices, and not just, as Thad said, the ones that I think are the most fun that have Vulcans, but may bring those up in honorable mentions. But yeah, I also wanted to have a variety across series and to not just pick, one that told us about one particular Vulcan character, but really showed us a bit about society, but also that I enjoyed.
That's interesting. Mine's similar. I didn't actually think about not using a specific Vulcan. I'm sure my list crosses the streams on that, but I did focus on, something that kind of reveals some in-depth backstory of Vulcan and their society. But I also decided to make sure all 5 of my episodes take place on Vulcan at some point in the episode.
Nice.
So that was kind of fun to think about, because there was a couple I eliminated. And then I eliminated every pick that I've made previously in our Vulcan-centric episodes on Trek Ranks, which are 2 top 5 Spock episodes and top 5 T'Pol episodes. So I ended up not having to cut too many that I was thinking about. There was 1 or 2 in there that I had on my list that I had to take out because they were on one of those shows. So yeah, that's it. My list, I think it's pretty top heavy. I got some heavy hitter episodes in my list. Got a couple of outliers too. We're definitely going to have some duplicates tonight. So let's get into it. Third Roboticon, introduce us to the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
Thank you, Third Emoticon. As always, everyone will start with their 5-word summary and a hashtag to tease their pick. Then we'll each reveal our top 5 Vulcan episode choice and the reasons we're highlighting it. After getting through 5 rounds of picks, we'll then get a few secondary system selections from everyone. And remember, if we have any duplicate picks, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedoes. Okay, Thad, we're going to start with you. What's your number 5 pick for your top 5 Vulcan episode?
All right. Well, my 5 words are emotional control requires much discipline, hashtag a worthy pupil, and it is the Voyager episode Gravity.
Yes.
So in this episode, we get a series of flashbacks to teenage Tuvok when he is a rebellious teenager who does not fully understand why he needs to control his emotions. And throughout the episode, he recognizes, with the help of the Vulcan Master, that if he doesn't control his emotions will control him. And it's pretty much the core of how Vulcans work. So I think that this was this was actually one of the first episodes I thought of when you brought up this topic here, and I figured we needed to do this because it helps show us that Vulcans, as we are told many times, do have emotions, but they control them because their emotions are so violent that without that control they would, well, lose control.
Yeah, I love young, angry Tuvok. And we just heard from the Vulcan Master in our recalibration. So, I mean, this episode, I love this episode. It fascinates me. It's in my top 20 for all of Voyager. So for me, it's not underrated. I rank it really high. It's one of my favorites. And when Tuvok says, my emotions free me, and he's so angry, and the back and forth between him and the Vulcan Master when he's like challenging him, like he's like, you speak in riddles because the truth frightens you, and the Vulcan Masters, like they're hidden in plain sight for you to discover. I mean, it's everything about it. I love it. It is absolutely one of my favorites.
If I was meant to deny feelings, why was I born with them? Where's the logic in that?
Hidden for you to find. Or in plain sight for you to ignore.
You speak in riddles because the truth frightens you.
You're right. It does frighten me. You were surprised to hear a Vulcan Master admit to having emotions?
Yes.
Emotions can be a powerful tool. To deny their existence is illogical. But you must learn to control them.
Why?
Do you wish to be taught?
I would question everything you say.
You would not be a worthy pupil otherwise. Let us begin. Sit down, Tuvok.
And the Vulcan Master was played by Joseph Ruskin, who played Galt in The Gamesters of Triskelion, which I just absolutely love. He's one of my favorites. He was in the Twilight Zone. So I love this episode. It's kind of a no-brainer choice. It was one that was eliminated from my list. Jarrah, what's your... Oh, and by the way, the Tuvok's love interest at the beginning that he's talking about kind of throwing his life away for is Jarrah. So, so Jarrah, what's your take on this?
Oh, yeah, that's a great pick. It's a great Tuvok episode, and not just because he has good taste in dates, apparently.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely one of my favorites. Okay. By the way, that's a Brian Fuller and Nick Sagan script. So I will question everything you say. Oh my God, so good. Okay. Jarrah, what is your number 5 pick?
All right. My number 5 pick is Neck Pinching 101 by Cousin Selleck. Hashtag R.I.P. Achaya.
Oh,
and,
here we go. Here we go. I had a feeling this was going to get picked. Sorry, keep going.
So that's obviously the animated series episode Yesteryear.
Love it.
And of course it takes place on Vulcan. In this case it is telling using Spock as a proxy for telling us about Vulcan society. But we learn about the Koswan maturity test. We learn that he's got a big pet Salat. We learn they have fun little healer dudes that live in like domed buildings that you can just call out to come take care of your poisoned pet. And of course, more importantly, the emotional, growing journey that Spock takes his younger self on. And I just think it's such a lovely episode. A lot of us have thoughts of like, what would you tell your younger self? And Spock actually gets to do that.
Yeah, this is my favorite animated series episode for sure. And we also find out that Vulcan has a lot of like predators, apparently.
Yep.
So, which we see later in Discovery. Yeah, I bawled my eyes out every time I watch this. I love Aichaya. I love Saylots. And this might be the most time we spend on Vulcan almost in any episode. I don't know. It's probably pretty close. I know it's a 30-minute episode, but the whole thing's on Vulcan.
Not the whole thing.
Dad, what's your take? Well, not literally the whole thing. Some of it takes place on the whatever Guardian planet. Dad, what's your take?
I love this episode. I know this was famously the only episode that Gene Roddenberry considered to be canon of animated series, and because it was written by Dorothy Fontana. And I think it's just a really good episode of TAS, and it definitely gives us a lot of info on the Vulcans that we didn't have before.
Yeah, for sure. Great background. Okay, speaking of an episode where we spend a lot of time on Vulcan, here we go. 5 words and a hashtag. By the way, I have a theme running through my 5 words and hashtag for all my picks. 5 words: Spock's resurrection showcases Vulcan history. Hashtag Jim. Your name is Jim. And I'll start with the big one. It's Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And the last 20 minutes of this episode is just crazy. You could never make a movie like this today, where after everything happens, you got the death of Kirk's son, the Enterprise destruction, I've had enough of you, death of Krug, and Genesis planet explosion, all this stuff happening. Then they go back to Vulcan and spend 20 minutes on the Faltorpan ritual, mumbo jumbo, and Dame Judith Anderson speaking in Vulcan, and Spock having his Katra returned, and I could not love it anymore. It's just there's so much ritual, and the pace is just so slow. I mean, that's basically what it is, and I love it. It's just taking its time, and you get a real good explanation for how Katras work and the danger involved, because basically she's telling Talar is telling Sarek that this hasn't been done in a long time, and a lot of danger involved. So just really cool, major world building. Obviously the emotion of Spock returning, one of my favorites. I love it. Thad, what's your take on The Search for Spock?
I absolutely love this pick. Search for Spock is, in my opinion, a very underrated Star Trek film, and the film that proves the lie to the claim that the odd numbered Star Trek movies are bad. Right. Fantastic pick for Vulcans.
Jarrah, what's your take on The Search for Spock?
I agree. It's a good pick. I think I actually just grabbed a souvenir glass, like one of those glasses they sold at gas stations for the movie.
Yes, from Jack in the Box. I have one.
Yes. I got the really random one that just says Faltor Pan on it and has like Judith Anderson and Spock, and on the other side it has like Kirk and Spock and says the title of the movie. But it would be super, super random if you had never seen this movie and you're just like, what's Faltor Pan? But just proves how important the information is contained in this film.
I love this so much because I literally have that glass in my cupboard, and I'm definitely going to send you a picture of it. I think it was Jack in the Box. It might have been Taco Bell. I can't remember now, but it was
Taco Bell.
It's Taco Bell. Thank you. It is the most it's not the best. It's got the little things at the bottom, like the rings. I mean, it is crazy, but I love it. But the episode's great too. So awesome. Fantastic. First round in the books, and there's no duplicates yet. Okay, let's go to Thad's number 4 pick.
All right. Well, my 5 words are: she has lost all control. Hashtag Vulcan Lower Decks. And it's Wedge Douche from Lower Decks, where we are introduced to T'Lyn, who is a rather, I suppose, unconventional Vulcan. The beauty of Wedge Douche was that it gave us this lower decks view of other culture ships, and it was really cool to see the Vulcans. I really liked where one of them asks if anyone would like to play chess, and then like they continue to have a different conversation, and then finally another one says, "I am available for chess," and just
so good.
Would anyone care for a game of chess when we are finished with our second duty shift?
No, I will be composing an arrangement for the loot, which should take several hours.
I am available for chess.
To Lynn, who by human standards is absolutely unemotional and logical, but is not as rigid as the Vulcans may want her to be, and we get the she has lost all control, and the best when she says that when her coworkers are talking to her about how people are talking about her, and she basically says she doesn't care. Like, it's just amazing. It's a great episode, and to show us that Vulcans are not necessarily a monolith. There are going to be a range of behaviors that certain Vulcans do and others don't.
Absolutely. This Wedge Douche was my toughest cut. I am so glad you picked it. Talin is amazing. I can't wait for her to see more of her, apparently coming up in season 4.
Yes.
And I'll throw this in there too. I love when the Klingons are kind of mocking the Vulcan ship by saying, can you imagine avoid death and cower instead of live long and prosper? I love that line. The whole thing is just a masterpiece. Every single moment from Talin going off the deep end, according to all of her shipmates, and extending the sensors. So good. It is absolutely a spectacular all-time Trek, my favorite Lower Decks episode. Jarrah, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I also love in that episode how, there's the callback where Talin says logic is the beginning of wisdom, not the end.
That's right.
And that, it's a theme we've seen before in Star Trek about the pitfalls of being super driven by logic and super rigid, and, why are you taking risks based on emotion, even if it might be founded on some level. But I think it's a profound message that is hammered home in a very short period of time in a comedy cartoon. So it's a great episode.
Yeah, it's similar to that. There's a moment where she said, and one of the other Vulcans on the ship says, "Are you insulting me?" And she says, "No, I just wish for you to broaden your definition of how you look at data. That sounds like an insult to me." It's so good. Oh God, the whole thing is just a freaking masterpiece. And just a little deep dive here. It's season 2, Strange New Worlds preview. Catherine Lynn, who wrote this episode, is now writing on Strange New Worlds season 2. So we'll see what she comes up with this awesome season. I love it. Okay, Jarrah, what's your round 4 pick?
Well, my round 4 pick is avoid death and cower, Biknuk.
All right, so what else do we have to say about this amazing all-time great episode?
I will say my hashtag is punitive spirituality because I love that phrase. The main thing I'll add that we didn't cover is that it also is so great at showing the sassy passive aggressive Vulcan side, which is just a delightful part of how we see Vulcans try to approach conflict across series. And so all those sassy moments, and the how she gives him the Vulcan salute when she's leaving that isn't quite as disrespectful as the Mariner one, but it's the Vulcan equivalent of that. That's basically a middle finger instead of a Vulcan salute when she's leaving the captain's office.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so that's a good cross. So you have the Klingon take, and then you have the Mariner take with the sarcastic salute. And I can't believe your 5 words was avoid death and cower. Oh my God, so good, so good. All-time classic. Punitive. What was it? Punitive
spirituality.
Oh my God. Okay, Thad, last word on Wedge Douche.
Still love it.
Okay, perfection. Our first duplicate. Okay, let's go to my round 4 pick. Okay, this is the deep cut. 5 words and a hashtag. Burnham's backstory is Vulcan history. Hashtag Katra connection. This one is Discovery Season 1, Episode 6, Lethe. And this one is a surprise pick for me, but I just love this episode. I kept thinking about, I mean, it's obviously one of Discovery's best, but, you know, it's not just the amazing backstory that we finally get to discover kind of Burnham's real connection to Spock and Sarah and their upbringing and the whole controversy with the Vulcan Expeditionary Group. And then, of course, the rift between Sarek and Spock and all that baggage. But you get this amazing, again, exploration of the Katra connection shared by Sarek and Burnham that we saw in Battle at the Binary Stars. And it's just really cool. And it's obviously something we've seen touched on in a lot of other places in Trek, that where these kind of connections happen, like in the Immunity Syndrome when a ship of Vulcans dies and Spock can feel it through space. But yeah, I just think the backstory here says so much about Vulcans and their human prejudices and Sarek's failing as a parent. I love this episode. It's a Joe Menosky script with Ted Sullivan, and you know James Francis is so good as Sarek. I just love Lethe, and I think I love those scenes in his mind on Vulcan when they're talking about that key thing from Journey to Babel from 50 years prior. Thad, what's your take on Lethe?
Oh, Lethe's fantastic. It introduces to the concept of the logic extremists.
Yes.
And yeah, hearing that the Vulcan Expeditionary Group would only allow one of Sarek's almost Vulcan children. So learning more about Vulcan racism is good.
Your ward, Michael, and your son, Spock.
What has my son to do with this situation? He's not yet begun his studies at the Science Academy.
Upon completion, he will apply to the Vulcan Expeditionary Group, and then there will be not one, but 2 non-Vulcans in its ranks.
Spock is
half Vulcan. Another of your experiments. The integration of humans into our culture is an admirable goal, but it must be titrated. In honor of your position and reputation, I will accept 1 of your not quite Vulcans.
Do you ask me to make an impossible choice?
Your reaction to this is quite illogical and suggests a conclusion based on emotion.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Getting the long distance mind meld thing, that was wild, but also really cool. I love this episode. It's one of my favorites from season 1.
Yeah, it is the Katra connection thing. I just dig it. It did it well in Battle of the Binary Stars, and to follow it up here, and then to think of the ways that you've seen it elsewhere in Trek. Jarrah, what's your take on Lethe?
Yeah, I don't know that I have that much to add. I agree. It's a great choice, and it reveals a lot of, focusing on the same family that we saw in yesteryear, but from a different perspective.
So true.
And just, showing us, because even though they're like an atypical family, they are subject to all of these societal forces on Vulcan. And so, showing us these characters that have, some folks that are maybe a little bit more relatable to humans, we can see what it's like to feel like maybe not fully an insider in that culture.
Yeah. Well said. Okay, we are moving to the Plomeek Soup Round. Here we go. It's round 3.
Oh, Vulcan Plomeek Soup. And I'll bet you made it too.
Thad, what's your number 3 pick?
All right. Well, this one's a bit of a cheat.
Okay. We love cheating on TrekRanks.
Because it's not 1 episode, it's 3 episodes.
Oh, okay. I like where this is going.
I figured you would.
I can guess.
My 5 words are: human helps Vulcans in reformation. # serialized arcs are logical. And it is The Forge, Awakening, and Kirshara from Enterprise Season 4. Because you really can't... If we're talking about them as Vulcan episodes and following my Prime Directive, where these episodes explore the Vulcan culture, you really can't pick just one of them. It's because they all tell one complete story about how Archer has Surak's Katra, and he helps the Vulcans who were trying to get back to the ways of Surak, he helps them to show the heads of Vulcan society that what they have been doing is not necessarily right, and that if they truly want to follow the teachings of Surak, that they should have a more peaceful operation and perhaps not be fighting the Andorians.
Yeah. These episodes are amazing. You said it perfectly, that it's basically one big long episode, right? You can't, it's almost impossible to break these three up. And you get the Vulcan political machinations going on with I mean, just everything with Velas and the introduction of T'Pau and Teles. I mean, the whole thing is amazing. And you get more of this cool Katra stuff with, I mean, Archer. I mean, the premise of this in the Forge. Archer has Surak's Katra. Are you freaking kidding me? What? That idea is gold, and these are. And
I love when Archer is talking to Surak in his head, and Surak basically tells him, to use an Earth phrase, "We're stuck with each other."
Yes. Yep. Oh, that's right. Yep. So good. Jarrah, what's your take on the Vulcan trilogy?
Yeah, this just was off my list because of partly I couldn't figure out separating them, but also there are some parts I really like, and certainly from a lore perspective, it brings a lot of stuff in, and the Kirshara for one. It also really makes us feel bad for Saval for at least a couple episodes, so that's it was a unique experience. But I also really like the callback to Stigma, where T'Pau helps T'Pol basically cure her Panar syndrome, which and it turns out there was totally a cure all along, but because of this stigma against it, they are basically passing along this lie because they don't like the practice. So that was a neat little callback to that episode, which had some important themes.
For sure.
My only thing that prevents me from enjoying it as much as I might otherwise is I think the episode would have been better if Surak's Katra was in T'Pol, and if it was more centered on if she was a more active player, because she basically is accompanying Archer. She does get in a couple fights, but she also gets captured, and Archer is really the one who's the active player who saves the day and makes all the Vulcans see everything differently. And I generally don't love that representation, but I think it's a really they're a really good series of episodes. Just if I was writing it, that would have been the change I would have made, because I think T'Pol could generally just use more stuff to do in the show, period, and that it would be nice to see the Vulcans at the heart of their own revolution.
I like that take. The stuff about the Panar syndrome and that whole callback to Stigma was to me such a great payoff. Absolutely, I love that connection. Love the way that went down. And of course we get the death of Teles as well, and those scenes are amazing between those two. Okay, awesome. Let's go to Jarrah. What's your soup round pick?
All right, it is Nivar Gonna Give You Up, and the hashtag is Candor Time.
Yes.
So this I'm referring to Unification Part 3 from Star Trek Discovery.
Fantastic.
And this is what we get to see. I think the first time we get to really look at what Vulcan is doing in the 32nd century. And I mean, technically it's not Vulcan anymore. It's Nivar. They're the Spock's unification has come to pass, and that's a great opportunity to show something that was in progress in the show that was set in the 24th century, which was a few decades before in our time, and to show it having this result. And then through this story of Michael having to basically argue a theory that would let Nivar off the hook for feeling that the Federation talked them into some experiments that caused the burn. And through this, even though ultimately, I think the focus of the episode is on Michael's character development. We get to see what the Vulcan and Romulan diplomats and like how their government works and what they're looking for from the Federation, and how deeply they experienced this, shame that they felt of maybe it was actually us that caused the burn, and we let ourselves get talked into it. And it lays the groundwork for all of this great stuff ahead, including all the stuff about Tarina, because I love Tarina a lot.
Tarina is amazing. So amazing that this is also my round 3 pick. I love this episode. My 5 words and hashtag. Navarre backstory is Vulcan's future. Hashtag Takal and Ket. And yeah, everything you just said, Jarrah. The Takal and Ket, that whole setup is so much fun. Such great writing. That scene when she just jumps in with I'm a graduate of the Vulcan Science Academy. So if you guys are still following the Takal and Ket, I'm issuing it right now. And when they cut away and Saru just goes, "Commander," like, what the hell did you just do? I love that whole bit. I love the setup of Navarre and Spock's role in finally bringing around unification. And we get this amazing scene where Michael gets to kind of look back and see everything Spock accomplished, which was a very cool moment. And yeah, the whole, just everything, the Romulans, Vulcans, Vulcans, the genius. The whole script is amazing. One of the great courtroom dramas. Fantastic episode. I mean, this is Kirsten Beyer, so yeah, we know it's going to be a high level. Thad, what's your take on Unification 3?
Oh, it's fantastic. And like you were just saying, the scene where Michael is looking at the history of Navarre before going to Navarre, because obviously it's brand new information for her that it was Navarre and not Vulcan. Yeah. And she's looking through this and she sees that it was Spock's doing that made this happen. It's just so powerful. And seeing this as the final evolution of the Vulcan and Romulan cultures, knowing that they had split off millennia ago and are now back together as one, combining the best parts of both. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good. And they tie in the co-op a lot too, which is just so much fun. I love everything they did with this episode is perfect. And I'll tell you, I think this episode, it's only getting better with time. Every time I rewatch it, I'm just like, wow, this one is really, really well written, smart script. Okay, let's go to round 2. Thad, what's your number 2 pick?
All right, well, number 2 for me, 5 words are the needs of the one, and my hashtag is your name is Jim, because it is Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock.
Another duplicate, not a surprise.
Yeah, there isn't too much that I could say about this that we haven't already said, but it's just, obviously, this is the episode this is the movie, whatever, that introduces us to the very concept of the Katra. And that becomes such a big part of Vulcan mythos going forward.
Yeah.
That's very important. We get the fact that Kirk and crew would risk their lives to save Spock, and then Spock not truly understanding it because it's not logical. But he does know that Kirk is Jim. He remembers that. He knows that he's his friend. Even if he doesn't have all of his memories back yet, that part of it is there, and he knows it.
My father says that you have been my friend. You came back for me.
You would have done the same for me.
Why would you do this?
Because the needs of the one outweighed the needs of the many.
I have been, and ever shall be, your friend.
Yes. Yes, Spock.
The ship. Out of danger.
You saved the ship. You saved us all. Don't you remember? Jim. Your name is Jim. Yes.
It's a fantastic whole thing. I love the entire process of the Valtorpan. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's so good. Remember, we use episodes as a shorthand term.
Yeah, yes.
But the 13 films are always in play as well. I love it. I mean, we've said a lot about it. It's just so cool. They spend 20 minutes on Vulcan just doing the Valtorpan ritual and just stretching it all out. And I love that. Jarrah, any final comments on Search for Spock, unless you have it on your list?
Spock, I'm glad they found him.
Yeah. Me too. Well said. Good job, Spock. Okay, let's go to Jarrah's number 2 pick.
All right, my number 2 pick is Funny, Fascinating, Fiancé, Freaky Friday. And the hashtag is Time for Hijinks.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. So time for Spock Amok from Strange New Worlds. And this ties into a whole bunch of other Trek Vulcan canon, including the amazing dream sequence at the beginning where Spock, dreams that he is having to fight himself to the death in the kal-if-fee. And it also returns to the idea of the Vitoshka Tour and shows us T'Pring's job working with the Vitoshka Tour. And it, extends our understanding of how Katras can work and how mind melds can work. I am personally not upset by that at all. And it's just super fun. I think it's great for both of these characters have to walk a mile in each other's shoes, but that also teaches the audience a bit about what the pressures are being a Vulcan in these roles and trying to balance your emotions and your logic and your the way that you're perceived as being too human or too close to someone who's human. And it's just really great. Again, more insight on Vulcan racism.
Spock Amok is a goddamn masterpiece. It is. That's all I have to say. Thad, what do you got?
I love it. It was on my secondary systems. It was probably the last one I cut. I love this episode so much that as soon as it came out, I had a custom T-shirt printed out that says it would seem hijinks are the most logical course of action.
Yes, of course.
So yeah, no, absolutely. Everything Jarrah said, I echo completely.
Anything?
No. But I have thought of another adjustment we could try.
Spock, you have been at these rituals 4 hours and none of them are working. We may have to seek some help with this.
There is one more chant I'd like to try. We might need a gong. I think I have one in my room.
What should we do?
You must answer it. These are my quarters. Anyone who comes here will expect me to answer the door.
I know how a door works. If they go away, that may give us enough time to fix the situation.
Logic suggests the easiest way to get them to go away is for you to answer while pretending to be me.
Spock, I do not like hijinks.
In that we are in agreement. But it appears that hijinks are the most logical course of action.
Yeah, and the performances are immaculate. The story interweaving around their Freaky Friday switch is perfection with the Rongovians and the negotiations. And you also get Enterprise Bingo, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And how is it we're 850 episodes into Trek and this is the first kind of like real straight body swap like this, other than I guess Turnabout Intruder. But I mean, just the hijinks, this is a joy. This episode is an absolute joy. It is a gift. I love it. If you don't enjoy it, that makes me sad. So I love it. Great pick. It sounds like it's not on. Yeah, this was on my secondary system too. So it just missed my list. So awesome that we got it covered. Okay, let's go to my number 2 pick. I mean, there's no way I wasn't going to be picking this one. So fire the torpedoes. T'Pau's backstory is Vulcan history. #. This pick has nothing to do with me. and it is the Vulcan trilogy. And I tried not to pick them, but I had to. So we've already kind of covered most of this. I'll just say my favorite thing about these 3 episodes is T'Pau and this Kara Zediker, the woman that played her. She just does a fantastic job. I love this character. I absolutely see her as the young version of the T'Pau we see in Amok Time. And I just I can just see a straight line connection from this character to that character becoming kind of a political lead of that society that she is in Amok Time from this rebellious character trying to better her world. So I love that character. I love this whole thing. I always give Judith and Garfield Reeves-Stevens most of the credit for The Forge, which is in my top 5 of all time favorite Star Trek episodes ever, because I just think it's that perfect. Jarrah, Thad, any final comments on the Vulcan trilogy?
Well, I feel like it not only sets in motion changes in Vulcan society that,
Right.
in a way, this is a really necessary bridging episode to get Vulcans from where we see them in Shadows of Pajem to where we see them in the original series.
Yeah.
But it also sets in motion T'Pol's transformation. There's not a lot more of Enterprise left, but she is seen reading the Kirshara and says it is really impacts how she sees the world going forward. And so I think it's additionally significant for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a great point. This episode kind of bridges the gap of kind of those early season Vulcans, and everyone was, for those of us who lived it, where people were just going crazy, like, these aren't Vulcans. And inside you're going, no, this actually, I could see the scenario they're building here with them building towards the TOS Vulcans, and this one pays it off in perfection. So, okay, let's go to round 1.
Begin round 1.
Thad, what's your number 1 pick? We got one big episode kind of sitting out there. We're going to see where it lands in round 1.
All right. Well, for me, my 5 words are Spock's lifelong mission finally fulfilled. And my hashtag is not so different after all, which obviously not from the episode I'm talking about, but I thought it fit. And it is Unification 3.
Oh, awesome. We have a triplicate.
Yeah. What more can I say that hasn't already been said? It is just amazing.
Yeah, the T'Kal and Ket, you pass. It's perfection. The whole thing. Yeah, it's perfect. Navarre, we love it. Do I need to change this episode to top 5 Navarre episodes now that Unification 3 is a triplicate? Jarrah, any final take on the Romulan Vulcans and Romulo Vulcans living on Navarre together?
I'm just really glad that my mom is not a member of, oh my god, why am I blanking now on the name of
Kuat Malat?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just really glad my mom is not a member of the Kuat Malat, because that just seems like it could be really, really awkward.
Yeah, I don't need absolute candor for my parents.
Yeah, that shit was actually kind of hard to watch, right? There was a couple of moments in that where you're just like, oh my gosh, and Burnham's like, her expression, the acting from Nico Margarine is so good. Just looking at her like, what are you doing to me?
Oh, I love it. I think it's deliberately kind of hard to watch because it's uncomfortable, but it shows that through those uncomfortable moments and having someone who loves you see you and kind of push you a little bit, that you can come to a new way of seeing yourself.
And she does it in front of everybody, right? Like she's standing there doing it in front of everybody. It's amazing. It is a fantastic episode. I love it. Might need to move it up in my rankings when we reevaluate. Okay, I love it. Let's go to Jarrah. What's your number 1 pick?
All right, I'm gonna go back to OG Star Trek, and with He's Not Really Dead Jim, hashtag ring them bells.
Perfect.
So, yeah, surprised it didn't come up earlier, but Amok Time, I feel like it's the first really significant Vulcan lore episode we have in Star Trek production history. Again, the influence of DC Fontana and envisioning how this culture would work. We've seen in several of the episodes on my list places where themes from this episode came back in future episodes, and it's a banger. It's a great episode. Yeah,
it's all-time great Trek, and the reason it didn't come up before because now it's a duplicate as both of our number one picks. My number one pick is also Amok Time, and I have a couple of 5 words and a hashtag, but I'm gonna use this one since we already talked about it. 5 words and a hashtag. Spock to Pring's SNW backstory invigorates. Hashtag fits good enough. And I love Amok Time. We talked about Spock Amok, and we're seeing this amazing stuff with T'Pring and Spock in Strange New Worlds, and I love every bit of it. When I watch Amok Time, I would say most of it fits. There's some little pieces sometimes where they'll say something, you go, it doesn't quite fit. But it's so, Amok Time, I've lived with this episode for like 50 years basically of my life, and it is iconic, everything about it. T'Pau, the production, the sets, the costumes, the makeup, the music. It's the greatest fight scene in the history of Trek, and T'Pau, hey, she's the only person ever turned down a seat on the Federation Council, so there she is, residing over Spock's and T'Pring's wedding, the Kunit kal-if-fee. It's literally perfect. One of my all-time favorites. And every time Amok Time comes up, I have to try and do it to T'Pau impersonation. So our ceremonies for Outworlders. Terrible, Moorhouse. Thad, what is your take on Amok Time?
It's great. It was on my secondary systems, of course. It is,
of course,
the quintessential Vulcan episode. It is, when you think about Vulcans, you think about Amok Time. That's why I didn't pick it, because I was sure at least someone else would.
it had to get picked. I don't think anything major was missed on our list. Yes, listen, just for shout outs for Amok Time, I'm just going to say I love Arlene Martel, the actor who played T'Pau, Celia Lovsky. That woman has been in my head for 50 years. I love her. I think she's just amazing in it. And of course, and we saw Stan in Strange New Worlds too. That's right. Who of course is in this. So anyway, this is, this comes down from the time of the beginning without change. This is the Vulcan heart, the Vulcan soul. This is our way.
Yeah, not to mention the great group cosplay opportunity that is those bell ringer guys.
Oh God, I love every time they show up at a con. I love it.
Yeah, and then the bell frames being in Spock's quarters and stuff. So good. And also Plomeek Soup, I think, first mention, and not to mention Ponfar as a concept. So yeah,
it literally has it all. Are the Vulcan or are the human? My T'Pau impersonation is terrible, but okay. People are turning this off right now as we speak. Okay, let's get into some secondary systems.
Let's see what you can do with the secondary systems.
What just missed your list, Thad?
I had Journey to Babel.
Yes, me too.
Sarek, Meld, and Carbon Creek.
Oh, Carbon Creek. I didn't even think of that one. That's a good one. That's why we do secondary systems. I had those other ones, but I did not think of Carbon Creek. Fantastic. So good. Jarrah, how about you? Any that just missed your list?
I also had Carbon Creek and Journey to Babel, as well as the Kirshara arc that you folks had on your list. And then, I couldn't resist having one on there that does not tell us anything about Vulcan lore, but was very fun. So I picked Take Me Out to the Holosuite.
Oh, that's good. Yes, I did think of that. It's a pretty good Vulcan episode, to be fair.
Yeah, it tells us about Vulcan sass for sure.
It sure does. To manufacture triumph. Here. My Cisco impersonation, much better. Okay, I had Wedge Douche was my toughest cut for sure. I had all of those. I also had Fallen Hero, which is an episode I've kind of grown to love that one over the last few years. And then my special shout out, and I couldn't pick it. I really was considering it, was Stigma. I think you brought it up before, Jarrah. I love that episode. I think it is really strong. It's a real powerful Vulcan episode. It might have made my top 5 if I hadn't picked it on my top 5 to poll episodes. So there you go. Incredible, iconic topic. I mean, lots of episodes that really get into the DNA of Star Trek. So I knew this was going to be great. Let's get into our regeneration cycle now, recap our picks, and go through some stats.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
Okay, Thad, recap your top 5 Vulcan episodes.
All right. Well, number 5 was Gravity from Voyager. Number 4 was Wedge Douche from Lower Decks. Number 3 was the trilogy of The Forge, Awakening, and Jarrah from Enterprise. Number 2 was Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And number 1 was Unification 3.
That's amazing. I'm just kind of registering that Unification 3 was your number 1. That's how good that episode is. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Mm-hmm. We all had it in our top 3, which really says a lot. Okay, so you had, like you said, 1 from Voyager, 1 from Enterprise, 1 from TOS and Discovery, and Lower Decks. So you spread it around. Jarrah, how about your 5?
Yeah, number 5 I had Yesteryear from the animated series. Number 4 was Wedge Douche from Lower Decks. Number 3 was Unification 3 from Discovery. Number 2 was Spock Amok from Strange New Worlds. And number 1 was Amok Time from the original series.
Fantastic list. So you also had 5 different series: TOS, TAS, Strange New Worlds, Discovery, and Lower Decks. So this is great. You had the 2 oldest series, TOS and animated series, and then basically 3 of the newest: Strange New Worlds, Discovery, Lower Decks. You also had 2 animated episodes and 2 Amok episodes. So that is a fantastic job. Okay, my breakdown, number 5 from TOS, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. My number 4 pick was Lethe from Discovery. My number 3 was Unification 3, also from Discovery. Number 2 was the Vulcan trilogy from Enterprise with The Forge, Awakening, and Jarrah. And number 1 from TOS, Amok Time, one of my all-time favorite episodes, Trek. So I had 2 from TOS, 2 from Discovery, and then the Vulcan trilogy from Enterprise. So I did not spread it around at all. Okay, couple of stats here. I was going to keep track. Well, we had 3 duplicates plus 1 triplicate. So that's kind of, I expected that. It's kind of the normally the way it happens with our species episodes. I will add, I tried to break down a list of the episodes that actually occurred on Vulcan. And I can tell you that out of our 15 picks, technically 10 occur on Vulcan. There's scenes on Vulcan. 3 of them, Unification 3, they don't actually have scenes on Vulcan, right? They're in the ship above Vulcan, in orbit over Vulcan. And then Wedge Douche has no scenes in Vulcan. So that is our statistical breakdown. Here is our series breakdown. We had 1 from Strange New Worlds and Voyager and the animated series, 2 each from Enterprise and Lower Decks. 2 films were selected, and then we, at the top of the list, 4 each, 4 from TOS and 4 from Discovery. So pretty cool representation. I think there was 7 overall picks from kind of the new era of Star Trek on our top 5 Vulcan episodes. So that says a lot about what new Trek is doing with Vulcans. So, okay, thanks guys. Now we're going to get in and initiate a temporal inversion because it's time to hear from you.
Initiate temporal inversion.
Initiating.
And for this week's temporal inversion, we're going back to episode 154 in our very experimental episode on connective Trek, when each guest kind of picked their own topic and spun their own narrative, with each pick kind of connecting from one to the next. And we got an amazing Connective Trek voicemail in from Nathan Royster, who was on our show last week when we did Scenes in Water. He is at Nathan_Royster on Twitter. He has an amazing Connective Trek list, so here it is now.
Hi, Jim. This is Nathan Royster at Nathan_Royster on Twitter. And for my Connective Trek, I wanted to explore the presence of grief in the history of the Federation. For my Prime Directive, my list moves in rough chronological order while also following the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief, which are my hashtags. So for number 5, standing athwart history, yelling stop, #denial. We start with Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. So although peace with the Klingons is a positive development, the sense of loss is too much for some characters. And although change is clearly coming and inevitable, the movie's conspirators are in denial, believing they can preserve the existing order. Number 4, This Is Where You Live, #anger. Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 1, Emissary. The aftermath of Wolf 359 led to a massive loss in life and Starfleet's perception of its own invulnerability. And through Sisko, we discover how much there's a lot of anger that continues to hold him like an anchor in the past. His grief is legitimate and honored in the episode, but both he and Starfleet must find a way to live into the present and move into the future. Number 3, dwelling in a nexus of regret, #bargaining. This takes us to the film Star Trek Generations. In the Nexus, Picard and Kirk don't find themselves in their greatest desires as much as their greatest regrets. Kirk relives the day where he left his love to join Starfleet. Picard is with the family he never had. And more largely, both are in antiquated settings that seem to indicate a larger sense of what was lost in the rush to the stars in the name of progress. It makes me wonder how many Starfleet officers wonder, if only, about a life on the farm or gathering around the fireplace as they took off to explore the galaxy. Number 2, that's enough boldly going, okay? #depression. And here we go to Picard, Season 1, Episode 2, Maps and Legends. Multiple losses have piled up. Wolf 359, the Dominion War, the attack on Mars, and the Romulan refugee crisis. And the Federation feels like it has lost its drive and purpose. And this is exemplified in Picard himself, as well as Raffi and Admiral Clancy, who are wondering what their purpose is and seem to be in no mood to boldly go much of anywhere. And finally, number 1, living is its own meaning, #acceptance. And we go to the surprisingly poignant Lower Decks episode, Crisis Point 2, Paradoxus. Sulu speaks for so much of the Federation's experience that our great losses are reflections of the great joys that we also experience. Life will always be in flux, and as we grieve what we lost, we also live with gratitude for what, and for who continues to be with us on the journey, and as we strive for what can be. My secondary systems include TNG's The Bonding, Discovery's Forget-Me-Not, and Picard's No-Win Scenario. And thank you, Jim, for including us on the journey. Live long and prosper.
Okay, nice job from Nathan. I love that, running through the 5 stages of grief on his Connective Trek list. And I really appreciate that number 1 pick for acceptance with Boimler and Sulu in Crisis Point 2, Paradoxes, which is just brilliant with Boimler finally kind of accepting his lesson from that episode. Fantastic list. So once again, those picks more than enough to clear ourselves from this week's temporal inversion. So as always, I want to thank everyone for all your great responses to the TrekRanks podcast. Please keep your list coming to me at TrekRanks on Twitter so we can retweet them. But we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 Vulcan episodes or a list from any of our past shows. Give us a call at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527, or you can just record it yourself. Send me a DM. We can connect that way. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of TrekRanks, we are doing a fun one. We teased this a few episodes ago, but we weren't able to record it because one of our scheduled guests was under the weather, so we pushed it down the line. But we now have it back on the schedule. It's our next episode, and it is the top 5 best hot mess. That's right. Best hot mess. So Thad and Jarrah, if you had to choose one character or maybe episode or thing that you would constitute as a top 5 best hot mess, what would you pick? Putting you on the spot. Thad, what do you got?
Quark.
Did you just say Quark?
Yes, I did.
Fantastic. Why would you label him a hot mess?
Because he's constantly doing schemes and things that are just causing chaos and trouble everywhere.
Because he's true to himself, right? He's always kind of just off. I love it. This is going to be the most fun episode. Jarrah, how about you? Anything off the top of your head?
If I'm just thinking hot mess episode, in terms of people being hot messes in the episode, not that the episode's a hot mess. I just the first one that sprung to mind was Alice, and Paris when he's under the influence of Alice is definitely a hot mess.
That's a fantastic pick. He is a complete hot mess in that episode. That's a great way to look at it. Okay, I haven't done my final list yet. We're recording that one this week. I think our guests on that are Adam Uno and Josh Zeller. They've been on before. I have a feeling it's going to be really character focused this episode.
I have a feeling that Lower Decks may play a role, but I think a lot of that is they're deliberately hot messes.
Yes. Yeah, that's a little bit different. So I have to break it down. We'll see. Okay, looking forward to that one.
Channel closed. Reset. Subspace communications. Scrambler code Riker 1.
Scrambler code Riker 1 acknowledged. Okay, let's close this episode out with a huge thanks to Thad, Hait, and Jarrah Hodge. Great to have you guys on the show. Any final Trek Scrambler codes either you want to relay before we depart? Thad.
Well, if you want to hear me talk about Star Trek pretty much constantly, you could talk to me in person, and that would be the experience. But you can also listen to me on Infinite Diversity, which is a podcast I have over on the BQN network, where we talk about every new episode of Star Trek a few days after it comes out.
Fantastic! Thanks for coming back on, man. And Jarrah, it was great to have you on finally.
Thanks. And if you would like to listen to me and my co-hosts discuss Star Trek, you can find us on wherever you get your podcasts. Look up Women at Warp or on social media at Women at Warp. And if I see you at a convention, I can show you my Vulcan calligraphy Idic tattoo.
Oh my God, that is so cool. We didn't even talk about the Idic or Vulcan calligraphy, which is the greatest thing ever, right? Amazing. All right. Thank you both for taking the time to be on. Great show. And finally, thanks to everyone for engaging with us here again on episode 159 of the TrekRanks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
What we are about to see comes down from the time of the beginning, without change. This is the Vulcan heart. This is the Vulcan soul. This is our way. Carry far.
Just want to remind everyone again that the entire TrekRanks catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and on your podcast player of choice. Our episodes never get carbon dated, so check out the topics you've missed and maybe just want to listen to again over at TrekRanks.com. And a reminder to check out our friends 5-Year Mission at 5yearmission.net. They're writing a song for every episode of Star Trek, and you won't believe how great their music is. They also have a podcast at the Trek Geeks Network, so seek them out. You won't regret it.
It is logical to improve our scanning capabilities instead of observing non-essential systems.
These readings are within acceptable parameters.
Correct. However, this region has never produced this type of anomalous energy. Does that not seem strange?
Anomalies, by definition, are strange.
Something about this feels off.
Feels off? You have been spoken to about this before, T'Lyn.
It is illogical to ignore something of statistical significance. I must inform the captain.
she has lost all control.